Well, it's a pleasure to have all of you joining us this evening. I'm Brianna. I'm the Director of Events and Sponsorships at UW Tacoma, and it's my pleasure to welcome you. Thank you for joining us for our inaugural virtual alumni speaker series. Hoping to have this ongoing for the next several months. An opportunity to connect with you guys from home. We ask that you remain muted during the interview. After the interview, if there is time, we will take questions using the chat feature. So you can just enter your questions there and we'll get those to Sarah, who's our interviewer. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat. Both myself and my colleague Ryan can make sure that you guys are taken care of. Hoping you all can hear me, and we'll ask you to let us know if you're having trouble hearing Sarah or Mark when we start the interview. It's now my pleasure to turn this over to our interviewer, Communications Major Sarah Smith. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Brianna. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. So tonight we have with us one of our proudest UW Tacoma alumni, Mark Glenn, known to many as Sergeant Husky. Mark holds a Bachelor's of Liberal Studies degree and a Master of Social Work degree from UW Tacoma. He's an Army veteran and, as you can see, one of the biggest Husky fans you might ever meet. So please join me in welcoming Mark Glenn. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. So let's just jump right in. I've got some questions for you. I'd love to start off by tell me about what Sergeant Husky means and what's this Sergeant Husky persona all about?
Absolutely. So first of all, let me just say it's a great day to be a Husky, isn't it?
Yes.
Sergeant Husky really is about the representation for me, two organizations, the University of Washington and the United States Army, that really helped build my foundation. And so I basically put together, and paying homage to both of them. Sergeant comes from my father who served in the Army, and that was his rank, Staff Sergeant Glenn. And so I used Sergeant, obviously, and put that together with Husky to again, show my allegiance to both organizations. And I think that it's kind of evolved over time. You know, obviously, it didn't always start out wearing this costume the way I'm wearing now. But for whatever reason, it makes people smile. And so who can trade that, right? So that is Sergeant Husky.
And I love that your hat band says right across the top, Sergeant Husky. So, Mark, you work with the Washington Military Department. Can you tell us a bit about that? Maybe start with what's your role there?
Yeah, I can say, man, it seems like yesterday I started working there. I've been with the Washington Military Department for 11 years and going on 12 years. And my role is the Chief Information Officer. So I'm basically the Information Technology Director. The Military Department is a state agency. Our primary mission is to take care of Washington State's citizens as it relates to emergency management, the Army and Air National Guard, and also the Washington Youth Academy. It's a great place to work, and it's just been, obviously with this COVID-19 situation, we've been extremely busy. And yeah, so I've been here almost 12 years, and it's been a great transition going from being and providing military service or serving in the armed forces and coming here to the military department. The environment and the camaraderie and the culture here is very similar to those that to the culture that was present while serving on active duty. So they're probably going to have to carry me out of here it's close to retirement.
That's great. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk to me about why UW Tacoma. What brought you here back in 1995? Or wait, sorry, that would be 1991, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Well, I guess the reason why I really left the armed services, left the Army, is because I had a desire to go to go to college. For whatever reason, when I was in high school, I did not pay attention to academics. I was really focused on athletics and wasn't really concerned about doing the best that I could in the classroom. And so I wasn't ready for college. I really wasn't. And so I decided to join the Army and, you know, obtain some lifelong lessons from the military. And through the course of 4 years in the Army, the desire for me to obtain my education was constant. And so when I had the opportunity to leave the service, the first thing on my agenda obviously was to find employment. And the second thing was to be able to get enrolled in a college program. UW-Tacoma specifically at that time was fairly new. It was always just a Seattle campus that was available. And those folks that lived in the South Sound and the North Sound didn't really have any options in terms of going to a first-class institution such as University of Washington. And so I recall like it was yesterday going to classes in the Perkins building. There was just one building that was the UW-Tacoma campus, as it's obviously much different now. But back then, the thing that was most attractive for me was the fact that UW-Tacoma was geared towards working students. And I knew there was no way for me to be able to go to college and just focus on college. I had to earn a living at the same time. And so that's really why I chose UW-Tacoma.
And as a veteran, what was it like to go back to school after your time in the service?
One of the things I think that's it's probably common knowledge that the military kind of programs you into believing that you can do whatever it is that you set your mind to. And initially, it was difficult to be able to try and juggle a full-time working schedule and a full-time evening degree program. So it took a little while. I would say probably it took 2 quarters before I finally kind of got my groove, so to speak, and got used to it. But everything that I've done prior to starting my education at UW-Tacoma, I think prepared me to really buckle down and be able to, be a good student. And so things like managing your time and being able to prioritize your time in a way that, you pretty much sacrifice and give up a lot of the things that you may have been accustomed to doing in your personal life prior to starting school, especially if you're working at the same time. But the military obviously taught me a lot about setting goals, and I would say that even today, goal setting is very important, and that was true way back when I started my academic program at UW-Tacoma as well.
Great. So what would you say was the most significant learning experience that you had at UW-Tacoma?
I think that I think back to my master's program. I was doing an internship at Raymond Hall, which is a juvenile detention program here in Tacoma. And I was blessed with the opportunity to be able to speak to a lot of young kids. And during my interactions throughout the time I had my internship, I had several young kids come up to me and actually I could see the light turn on in their eyes. And for me, that made it all worth it. And I will cherish those moments forever. But it really helped me to kind of think about, it's not just about getting your education and bettering yourself, but I think taking that a step further, really, that's where that moment hit for me when it became important for me to be able to learn how to take what it is that I've learned and the things that I've been able to experience, and then share that and empower other people, whether that be your peers or coworkers, but other children especially, to be able to do that and see you reach children so that they can relate to you and they can feel like they also have an opportunity to be able to succeed, just as I have. That's what makes it worth it.
That's great. So a question that goes with that, who are the professors or mentors or people in your life that added to that experience when you were in school?
I think back to Professor Beth Kalikoff. She was the writing lab professor, and I remember what she used to say to me even today. And it was all about learning and perfecting the art of commanding the English language, and being able to do that in writing translates into power. Education being power. And so Beth and I are still friends today. I believe that her words were very powerful for me back then and are still for me today. So I would say Beth Kalikoff, definitely. And then another professor I had, Anthony DaCosta, who was the Indian Studies professor, who my military career allowed me to travel a lot overseas, and I spent over a year in Belgium. And it really opened my eyes about, really what's different about the world, and how good we have things here in the United States of America. And going through the Indian Studies class and learning all about Indian culture and the caste systems and poverty levels and many of the things that we have here in our country, and how they were different. Professor DaCosta's passion for teaching and for education was just something that was really meaningful for me. So
yeah, that sounds like some really important perspectives to those experiences offered you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so if you could go back in time and do it all over again, would you do anything differently? Is there a class you would have taken or maybe paid more attention in, or were you an excellent student?
I mean, I would, if I were to rewind the tape for me, I would only look at my time that I was spending in high school. And I was not as focused on my academics as I should have been. But in terms of my career after high school, I would not do anything different. I mean, I really believe that although it was probably one of the most difficult things I did in my life, which was to go through graduate school full-time and working full-time, that's really where I cut my teeth, and that's really where I learned, and I taught myself that it's not just a phrase that people say that you can do whatever you put your mind to. It really takes going through 3 years or going through a period of time where you really push yourself mentally. And we talk a lot about preparing our minds and preparing our bodies for challenges. We do a lot of that in the military, and I think that the University of Washington Masters of Social Work program allowed me to take my preparation to a whole new level that I didn't know that I could reach. And so I think that that's something that I will always be grateful for. And that is really one of the reasons why I'm so flamboyant when it comes to representing the University of Washington, because of how my education really changed and transformed my life.
Would you have any words of advice for graduate students who are trying to find that balance, or even undergrad students between working and families and going to school full time?
Yeah, I would say that, what's important is that that you recognize and understand that your time in graduate school, or your time even in an undergraduate school, is a very small blip on the radar screen when it comes to the entirety of your career. However, it's very important that you realize and you recognize that your time in school is really building or putting in place a foundation. It's like building your home. You're putting in place these building blocks. And the way I look at it is, my undergraduate career was one building block. My graduate career was another building block. All of my work experience and work history are more building blocks. And so it's really all about continuing to have that solid foundation that allows you to grow professionally and personally exponentially. And that's something that nobody can take away from you.
So how did your experience at UW-Tacoma influence your career pursuits after graduation?
I was already working. First of all, I should mention that I've been working for the state of Washington for now going on 25 years, which seems like an eternity, right? I can't believe I'm that old. But so while I was going through school, I was already working for the state, and I was already working within a career track in the information technology, which was a continuation really of my career that I spent in the United States Army. And I will say, and I just got through saying this to some of my team, and that is in the technology arena, it's commonplace that technicians are very solid and strong on the hard skills. What is not common is for that technology professional to have just a strong set of soft skills. And that is what I believe the University of Washington really helped me develop and to be able to harness that to really allow me to progress in my career. So make no mistake, I know that had I not obtained my master's degree from the UW, I probably would not be in a level of position that I'm at now, which is a senior director for a state agency. And so I'm very thankful for that.
Hmm. So what surprised you the most, would you say, about the area of your work now?
I mean, I think that every day is different. And we have been conditioned to believe that you're almost to the point where, at least here in our organization, that you anticipate change. And not only anticipate, but you also, you have to learn to embrace change in the work that we do here. And it's something that you kind of learn over time and you get into a routine. But if you have difficulty with change, especially in technology, you know, those are the folks that don't last very long because technology is full of constant change. And right now is no different. Right now, in terms of how organizations all over the world are shifting from folks working in the office, and now a large number of folks have shifted dramatically to working remotely. And so that's, for me, that's just another change that that occurs in cycles, you know, within our IT arena. It's something that we anticipate and expect.
Hmm. So can you talk to us a little bit how COVID-19 has impacted you in your daily life then?
I would say that we kind of had an option to be able to make a determination on whether or not we were going to continue to work in our office or work remotely. And for me personally, I chose to work in the office. And the reason for that, because we have responsibilities of providing technology support to our state's emergency operations center. So the Department of Health and our emergency management division are really responsible for coordinating Washington State's response to COVID-19. And I would say the biggest thing for me really has been to keep a routine. My routine obviously has changed, but my routine of getting up and going to work every day has really helped me to kind of navigate this storm that we're in. And another thing I will add to that is I obviously cannot speak for all folks that have been in the military, but I know a good number of us will say this, and that is that when you serve in the Army, you kind of get used to the government taking things away from you, telling you what to wear, telling you what time to eat, telling you where to live, and so this is very similar to that. And I think that that in and of itself has really helped me to kind of to be that that calm when I come to work. Some of our staff obviously are taking it a little more harder than others, but I think it's important as a leader to be able to support your staff through any disaster, whether it's COVID-19 or others. It's important that somebody is there to be able to be that barometer and guide so that ultimately the organization is able to fulfill our mission.
Hmm. What about your own mental health? How are you staying? I know you mentioned your military background helped prepare you for this, but what are you doing to help yourself stay healthy mentally and otherwise during this time?
Well, I have to pay homage to my education that I learned from my master's in social work program. And we learned a lot about self-care and being able to make sure that you have periods of time, whether that be in a day or throughout your week, to have decompression times. And so, again, my education is continuing to pay dividends for me because I believe it's really allowed me to maintain an attitude and to maintain some sense of normalcy going through all of this. Now, make no mistake, when this is all over, everybody's going to be elated. And but during this time, obviously, it's important, I think, to be able to demonstrate, especially when you're in a leadership position, that you're able to weather the storm, so to speak, and ultimately, take care of your people and give your people what they need to be able to get their jobs done.
Hmm. So I want to circle back a little bit. What would you say to students who are nervous about not working specifically in their field of study?
And so I've been asked this question a lot about why is it that you're working in IT and you have a master's of social work? And I always enjoy that when I get that question. I will say to students not to be nervous at all. You really will not ever, while you're going through school, realize the value of your education. You will be able to pay attention and understand much of the coursework, but it's clearly the intangible things that you learn that you may not necessarily recognize while you're going through your program. In fact, in some cases, you may not recognize it until years after you leave the university. And so I say to any student who's worried and nervous about that, enjoy your time while you're here. Enjoy your time getting your education. And again, it's a small blip on the radar screen. It's important that folks know, that students know that you're going through this phase of your life. It's really all about your professional development and your development as a human being. And your university education is really one part of that. There's going to be many more years of development and maturation that take place long after, whether you decide to go to graduate school or not. So don't worry at all about being pigeonholed into a specific career field based upon your degree. It's just, it's not something that should weigh on your mind at all.
Is there anything in your day-to-day work that you weren't expecting, or anything that you've had to kind of adapt to or learn from this experience of kind of switching career paths?
I don't know if I would say that I haven't really expected, but I would just say that the ability to navigate our political environment and to navigate and be able to utilize both in IT, for instance, to be able to rely upon your technical skills and those soft skills. I think that I never realized how much or how important it would be to learn those soft skills. And I just was saying this to my team the other day, and that is the easy thing in IT is the technology. That's simple. The most difficult thing is how do you interact with people? How do you treat your fellow mankind? How do you deal with pressure? How do you function when the heat is turned up? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how smart you are technically. If you can't deal with people, if you have a difficult time interrelating with others, you'll have a difficult time in your career. And so I think that folks need to, at least within the IT arena, to focus on not just sharpening those technical skills, but also pay attention to being empathetic and caring for one another, and being able to demonstrate to others that other human beings are just as important. We all are in this together.
Mm-hmm. So a question that kind of goes along with that, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to current UW-Tacoma students?
I mean, I think the first thing I would say is enjoy the ride. Enjoy every moment. Soak it up and understand that the learning environment, first of all, you are at one of the premier institutions in the world. And the education that you are going to receive is top notch. And I think it's important to know that while you are engaged in your education, that you challenge yourself and do everything that you can to learn everything that you can. And understand that this is just a part of your development, that you're going to move on, whether that's through graduate school or to start your career. You're going to continue your development. That right now is just a part, an initial phase of you learning a lot about yourself and how you fit in this world.
That's great. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add before we open it back up for Q&A?
I would just say there's one thing that you know, the initial question you asked about who Sergeant Husky is, and
yeah, so
I've kind of evolved into, you know, a way of thinking that obviously I have been blessed with a lot of wonderful opportunities to travel and to meet a lot of great people and to establish a lot of great relationships, and so Sergeant Husky has kind of evolved into, you know, also trying to figure out a way to be able to help other veterans. And so I've started this page to be able to start the process of identifying ways and resources to be able to help outreach for veterans that are disadvantaged. And so I think that's important that people know that about me. It's not about bringing attention to myself. It's more about bringing attention to issues and difficulties that veterans face once they come back, whether that be through PTSD, homelessness, substance abuse, or you name it. Anything that I can do in my persona as Sergeant Husky to be able to give back to other veterans, that's what brings me joy, and that's what I plan on continuing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service too.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring Brianna back in, and we're going to open up the Q&A.
Great. So if anyone has a question for Mark, you're welcome to put it in the chat, or you're also welcome to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. I'm just making sure, yep, we should be able to do that. So go ahead if folks have questions.
Hi, Mark. It's Deanna.
Hello, Deanna. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit about, this emergency management that you're part of now in your role, are you meeting with people across other organizations or just your organization?
Great question. Yes. So in my role as the CIO, it's my responsibility to make sure that all of the technology that, number one, exists within the Emergency Operations Center is up and running. And everyone who comes and works within there, whether that be folks from the Department of Health or DSHS or a number of other jurisdictions, they have all kinds of requests for technology you would not believe. Someone asked for 1,000 cell phones. Those cell phones need to be deployed to rural areas out in the tribes and other parts of the states. The whole notion on the ability to be able to track and trace who has been exposed to COVID-19. Of course, they need technology, right? So they asked for 750 iPads and cell phones to go with that. And so there's just a number of requests that come in. And so in my role, I'm interacting with folks who are technology leaders and also folks that are actually Department of Health and those that are actually running the state's response. Does that answer your question?
It does. That's awesome. Thanks again for your continued service, obviously.
You bet. You're welcome. Thank you.
Great, and it looks like we have a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat. Sarah, do you want to go ahead and ask those, or do you want me to?
Oh, sure, I can do it. Let's see here. Mark Leslie would like to know, how do you spend your free time? What are your hobbies and community involvements outside your state work and military obligations? And she says, thank you so much.
Wow, great question, Leslie. I have this thing for travel, right? So you will see me in the airport all over the place. I don't know. I think my time early on in the military, living abroad when I was 18, 19 years of age, really opened my eyes to the entire world and just gave me a fascination of travel. And so I've been blessed and had a lot of opportunities to be able to continue to do that. And so I spend a lot of my time traveling. I just love exploring and love being able to visit with family that are spread out all over the country.
Great. We've got another question from Shauna. When did you realize the impact you could make through being an alumnus of UW-Tacoma?
That's a great question. It was not immediate, that's for sure. It took me, I would probably say about 10 years into my career after leaving leaving my MSW program. I think that I never really realized that initially. It took me a while, and I think part of that had to do with obviously was so focused on trying to build my career and provide, obviously, and support my family. And so I think that as I've gotten older, I've gotten a lot wiser. So we've continued to learn as I've aged. And so it took me about 10 years. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great, and we've got a question from Jeff. What is or was your favorite Husky moment? And he says, thank you for your service.
Oh, you're welcome. I think my favorite Husky moment had to be going to the Rose Bowl when even though we lost Ohio State. I think just the experience of being in the Rose Bowl with the Huskies was all the festivities around it, and being able to see a lot of the behind the scenes things that happen before the game actually occurs. That's an experience. I would probably add the second one would be close behind that would be the experience watching the Apple Cup in Pullman in the snow and watching the Huskies beat the Cougars when we weren't supposed to. That was probably, even though I nearly got frostbite, I had so much fun at that game. It was a memorable one for sure.
I know some Cougars that weren't too happy about that, but yeah. All right, we've got one from Babdallah. It says, I ran into Mark at SeaTac Airport on your way to one of the games. However, my question is, do you travel for all away games?
If I could, I really would. I try to get to as many as I can. It's just a different experience being able to go to the road games, and believe it or not, I actually enjoy interacting with the opposing team's fans. And it never fails. When I show up wearing all this gear, people just look. They just look at me, and I don't know why. Why are they looking at me? And the funny thing is, a lot of times people will come up and we'll have a conversation, and that really what makes it worthwhile. You find out that sports is really just a way to bring people together, and football is no different. And so yeah, I try to travel as many road games as I can.
That's great. Well, if anyone has any other questions they would like to ask Mark, you can go ahead and enter them in the chat right now. Okay, it looks like we have another question from Jeff. As a veteran and Sergeant Husky, what programs are you involved in to promote positive mental health?
I think that one of the things I've been doing with really with Sergeant Husky is trying to, and I'm just getting this really off the ground, and that is to partner with nonprofit organizations that have already established themselves and are already in the community and providing services to veterans. And so I just want to be the assist man. I want to be the person who helps. Maybe I find someone who's in philanthropy who wants to donate money to a cause. I will be that person who is the face of a specific cause. In this particular case for me, my cause is to help veterans, right? And so there is obviously a wide range of issues that veterans need assistance with, whether that be with healthcare and at the VA, improving care there, or a number of issues that I mentioned earlier. And so really, it's all about doing everything in my power and leveraging whatever it is that Sergeant Husky brings for people. If that encourages folks to be able to open up their checkbook and write a check to donate towards a cause that's going to help veterans, I'm there. And there's no such thing as a too small of a donation. And so that's something, again, it's just getting off the ground for me, and I'm very excited about continuing to do that. And so the more I can get the word out that's what I'm trying to do. Obviously, I've got a lot of work to do while I'm continuing to work full time, but I truly believe I have the capacity to be able to partner with those people that are already engaged in a lot of the areas of the community that don't necessarily need me to reinvent the wheel. But again, my purpose will be to continue to bring folks together, whether that be with donors or other resources that are out there.
Great, and looks like we have a question. Oh, this is a great question from Aggie. She says, hi, Mark. How do you think the veteran student experience differs from the experience of the student who isn't a veteran? And how can we as alumni support the veteran group better?
Hi, Aggie. Great question. You know, I think that the beauty of the University of Tacoma really has been, when I first started way back in '95, the veteran program existed, but was nowhere near what it is today. And obviously that's true for many other programs at UW Tacoma, being that it has grown over the years. I think for the most part, you know, as a veteran and as a student, you bring with you a different perspective. And the nice thing about coming to school here at UW Tacoma, everybody brings different perspectives. And so we've got international students, we've got students from all walks of life that come together. And I don't know that I would say that being a veteran makes me any different. At the end of the day, we were all here for one goal, and that was to get our education. And so I think having more veterans and having an environment that's supportive for veterans to come here makes the entire educational experience a lot richer. And that, I think, is what's critical. And so again, I know that the veterans program has grown tremendously, and it makes me cry when I come on campus now today and I see that there's actually an entire program built out and a quiet space for veterans to go and study. And it's marvelous, and it makes me feel great knowing that so much is being done for veterans today. But at the same time, I know that there's more that we can do. And I think that the university has reached out a lot to veterans, to the veteran community. And I just think that, again, we have a lot to be thankful for all of the things that the University of Washington gives to us, and not just to veterans, but to all students as a whole.
Well, Will Johnson says, thank you for your service and for the work you're doing now. And Karina would like to know, what was your favorite moment from the Vegas Bowl game?
Well, let's see. First of all, while I was there, they lost my luggage. And so I was very disappointed that I didn't have my gear on. And I don't know how, but somehow people still recognized who I was. They still came up to me and they said, hey, Sergeant Husky, how's it going? I'm like, well, you don't see my hat. I didn't have my jacket. I was wearing sweats. And so I think that just having people show love for you, many of which are complete strangers, that is what makes it all worth it. And so I think that I'm going to continue to do this for as long as I can. But Husky Nation is just a family to me, and it's great being able to go to the airport and see someone and have someone come up and exchange pleasantries and to be able to share stories. We like to call them war stories in the military, right? We share war stories, but really it's that being part of a family, and that's what makes it special.
All right, if there's any other questions you'd like to ask Mark, go ahead and enter them in the chat now. And Mark, Leslie would like to know, what are your favorite books or reading materials, favorite movies? And she says, we are proud to call you a UW Tacoma alum.
Oh, thank you so much, Leslie. I would say that I enjoy thoroughly laughter, comedy. And so anything that's dealing with comedy as far as movies goes, those are my favorite. In fact, there's a series of movies that was made by Ice Cube around next Friday, and that whole series that I will watch today repeatedly, even though I've seen them maybe 50 or 60 times. It's still funny. And so I will say that I just have this thing it is a priority for me to be able to laugh. And I like to share that with other people. And it's so funny how it's amazing. It's amazing how it's how laughter is contagious, right? And so you're laughing and someone else hears you, and next thing you know, they're laughing, and it just kind of transforms people in terms of how they feel at that moment. So we need more of that.
Wonderful. Somebody just watched Friday again last weekend here.
That's right. They had the marathon.
All right. Well, if there's any last questions, we can take those now. Otherwise, we will go ahead and start wrapping up. And Mark David says, thank you for your service.
You're welcome, David. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Sarah. And of course, thank you, Sergeant Husky. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here tonight. And thank you for so proudly wearing the purple and gold. As Leslie said, we are very proud to call you a UW-Tacoma alum. For all of you attending, thank you for joining us. We look forward to having this series ongoing. So hoping you will join us on May 14th. It's another Thursday at 6 p.m. Featuring our new Assistant Director for Alumni Relations and Annual Giving, Shauna Lawson. Do you want to wave, Shauna, so they know who you are? Wonderful. We decided we would let her be here for a few more weeks since she started on Monday. We would make her do this the first week, so you guys can join us on May 14th. And Shauna is an alumna from the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences. We look forward to having you join us as we hear Shauna's story. And we hope that you all stay safe. And go dogs.
Go dogs.
Go dogs.